What's going on, guys? So we have one hell of an episode this week of Samurai Jack. Like, oh my god, this is probably going to be the most action-packed episode I think we've seen so far in the entire 10-episode 5th season so far. So basically what happens is we start off and we see Jack, and this is a flashback. So Jack is back in the past, well, in this flashback, and he basically finds this portal, and apparently it's the last portal to go back in time. It's the last one. Tries to go through, Aku is there and pulls him out, and now Jack has to fight these creatures, these animal creatures that Aku sends after him. What I think is interesting is in the old series, every time Jack sent minions after him, whether they were smart individuals or whether they were mindless animal creatures, they were always, almost always robots. And the reason for that was obviously because it was on Cartoon Network. They couldn't show, obviously, Jack killing real animals. But I just think that it's interesting that back in the old series, even the animals that Aku would send after Jack were robots. But now we see him killing these creatures and blood is coming out. So these are real animal creatures that he's fighting here. But then those big creatures actually shrink down after he kills them, and they become these tiny sheep-looking creatures, which I think is so. This new season is so fucked up for Jack because we are always having to see Jack in this like bottomless pit of endless depression of like almost like, man, I can never do anything right, because every time Jack does something, does anything, he fucks up in one way or another. Like, he's killing these creatures that are trying to kill him. Oh, well, wouldn't you know it, they're innocent little creatures that, could have easily been, detoured to save themselves, and then they would have shrunken down, and then he could have saved their life maybe. So it's really cruel to see Jack always being put down like this. But basically what happens is, after he does this, he feels horrible and he drops his sword, and it ends up falling down a ravine, and he can't find it. So now we're back to the present, or I guess the present of the future, and Jack has a plan to find his sword. So what he ends up doing is he ends up going atop this mountain and meditating, and he ends up going inside this, basically like this whole other world of his mind, where he ends up encountering other inner beings that are his psyche, that are parts of his psyche. It's really interesting, and we're going to get into that in a minute. But while he is meditating, Ashi is trying to defend him, and here comes this huge army horde after Jack's neck. And what I think is so interesting is that this fight is so fucking badass. This fight is so fucking badass. Like, she continues to just punch and mutilate these guys. The scene that made me literally sit there and say, oh shit, was when she breaks off their daggers on all their staffs and throws it back at them, and it just stabs all of them in the freaking head, and blood is all splurting out. But there's actually a scene, it's one of the first punches that happens that was actually in the preview last week, and when I saw this last week, I knew this was going to be a good fight. And it's when, if you guys remember in the preview last week, when Ashi throws that punch, and the animation is so beautifully done to where you can totally feel the impact that she's got going there in that punch. It's just as like amazingly impactful in the series, or in the episode I mean, as it was in the preview. And it's so cool because she's fighting this. Look, if you look at this army, it's literally going down the entire mountain and reaching all the way to the back. This is a huge army, and she fights them all by herself. Meanwhile, which I love the transitions in this, by the way. The transitions are hilarious because we've got Ashi screaming and yelling, and there's intense music going on in the background, and then it'll just cut and we got silence, and we're back in Jack's mind, and then it'll cut away and intense music, action, yelling, screaming, blood, and then cut away, and then it's silence, and Jack is just calm, and it's really cool. I like that. But basically, when Jack is in this world, he comes across this ancient monk-looking guy, and Jack is trying to ask him, "Hey, I know you know where my sword is, bro. Tell me where my sword is." And the guy's like, "No, there's something you must do first. There's something you haven't quite been able to overcome." And what that is if you guys remember, in the past episodes, Jack has always had this thing over him, this sense of doubt, this sense of there's no hope left, this sense of, almost anger inside of him, of just this, and there's the reason for that. It's because there's something inside of him that's making him this way. And we've seen this character before, or not this character, but this psyche, this part of him before, in previous episodes, especially when he, was underneath, when he was fighting the $7 of Aku for the first time, and he was underneath that platform, and the spirit comes out, and he's got these sharp teeth, and he's just saying, I don't know why you keep fighting, there's no hope left, and blah 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 blah. But that is this creature that is, or not creature, but that is one of the parts of the inner psyche inside of Jack, that is currently fighting him back, trying to tell him what to do. And Jack is basically like, all right, you know what? I've had enough of you. I've had enough of, you trying to control me. And he's just basically says, I'm not going to have it anymore. So he literally says, I'm not going to have this anymore, opens his eyes, and he makes him vanish. And right immediately as that happens, the monk says, okay, you're ready. You've done what you needed to do. And then it flashes, and then all of a sudden we see the three gods. If you guys remember in the episode of, I believe, season 4, correct me if I'm wrong, of Samurai Jack, the birth of evil episode, where you had the three gods that were trying to kill Aku before he was able to birth. They appear before Jack in this week's episode. And basically they say, you are worthy just like your father was, and they zap him, and Jack is back. Jack is back. The old Jack that we've seen, and the one we've only seen this season in merely flashbacks, is back. No more beard. We have his old gi, and they made him a brand new sword for him to fight. It's the same as his old one, but Jack is back. Like, this isn't, old Jack who's crazy. This isn't old Jack who's lost his mind. This isn't old Jack with beard and long hair. No, this is Samurai Jack with the gi, with the sword, with the hair, and in a ponytail. He's back. While this was happening, Ashi's mom comes back, and she was actually the leader of the army. So after she defeated the entire army, Ashi's mom tries to assassinate tries to assassinate Jack while he's meditating, and she ends up fighting her one-on-one, excuse me. And it's a really cool fight. There's a couple questionable things that I had when this was going down, because there was one, basically her mom had a knife, right? But what she did to defend herself was she ripped off like one of those little horns of the skeletons of the those little sheep creatures, and she was using the horn to kind of combat her sword, which was understandable. And then they basically get to this point where they're behind a rock, and her mom uses the sword to poke through, like to stab through the rock. Like okay, I don't know the sharpness of her sword, so okay, I can buy that. What I didn't particularly buy was Ashi was taking the horn of the skeleton creature who's probably been dead for years, and the sharpness of the horn is probably very dull by now, and used that thing to also stab through the rock. I was just watching that, and I was like, I'm pretty sure the horn isn't that sharp anymore to be able to do that. But I digress. It's a really cool fight because, her mom is just basically like, you failed us, you've always been weak, you've always been blah, 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 you've turned your back on Aku. And she says, no, you treated me wrong, you did this and that, Jack showed me the right way, and blah, blah, blah. And she, in a really interesting way to die. Her mom tries to jump and try to stab Jack, and Ashi throws one of the arrows that's on the ground, and it stabs her, and she falls off the front of the cliff, and she dies. Well, Jack ends up coming back, and it's so cool to see. It's not confusing because I get what they're trying to do, but it's just kind of weird that now that despite all of this being a mental thing, it was all meditation, right? But yet he's in real life got this gi and got this hair that's not there anymore, and got his hair that's up in a bun now, and it was shorter, and like it's just, I get it, but it's kind of like they didn't explain it too well. And I get it. It's a spiritual thing. I totally understand. But it's just kind of weird because even Ashi's like, Jack, is that you? You got your sword back, and you got a haircut, and you shaved. And he's like, yeah, that happened. And then she says, okay, what do we do now? And he says, now we kill Aku. And then boom. That's the episode. That's how the episode ends. So now we're finally getting a wrap on everything that has been Samurai Jack. I'm really excited for next week because it seems that if this works out the way that I think it's going to, because we're already almost done. We are already almost done, guys. Because there's only 3 episodes left. This was episode 7, so we only have episode 8, 9, and 10. If this goes the way that I'm sure it's gonna, if the way I think it's going to, episode 8 will probably be a lot of the chasing after Aku bits. Episode 9 will be the death of Aku, I believe, in my opinion. That is when Aku will die, and Jack will find a way back to the past. And episode 10 is hopefully going to be a wrap up of everything. Like, he's going to go back to the past in episode 10. He's going to, he's going to go back to the past in episode 10, kill the past Aku, and then wrap up everything that has to be in the past. That's just what I think is going to happen. I think he honestly is going to fight Aku twice. But then again, he might find another portal and send himself back to the future, or send himself back to the past, and then just kill the past Aku, because that's killing 2 birds with 1 stone right there. But either way, guys, comment down below what you guys thought about this week's episode. It was amazingly intense. These episodes just continue to get better and better, and I guess I'll catch you guys next week with the next episode of Samurai Jack.